Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you. So, protocol is always a very difficult thing. So I will keep pace with my the last speaker. I can see that we're expecting the Honorable Minister for Budget and Planning, but I cannot see the Permanent Secretary that is meant to be representing him here because I know him very well. Is the Permanent Secretary here? No, it's not. So that's a problem with protocol, and you don't need to, go by what we have. So I would acknowledge very warmly the current chairman of NESG. Thank you very much for inviting me and all of the great work that you are doing. I will acknowledge our own NSC for keeping faith with this institution, all of the captives of industry that are here, our students and partners of the NESG, and gentlemen of the press. I think it's an honor and a very rare privilege to be here today. This podium has afforded several great Nigerians, intellectual, academic, economic, and some political, to come and have conversation in this great hall. And I'm sure you all know that the Lagos Business School holds a pride of place for some of us who have had the opportunity at one point or the other to have been an alumni of this great institution. It is an honor to be here this morning at the occasion of the Nigerian Economic Summit, at this public lecture and Founders Forum to mark the 30th anniversary of the summit. The Nigerian Economic Summit and the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, which emerged a few years later, have become an important feature at the critical intersection of both public and private sector interventions in our country. This is not in any way surprising when you look at the founders and the visionaries of this summit. Nobody, in my view, exemplifies the bridging of the private and public sector, as we've said here this morning too, than the likes of PDG himself, Pascal Dozie, but more importantly, late NS Shonekong, which the chairman also mentioned, who was instrumental to the founding of the NES and whose career touched the highest level attainable at both the public and the private sector. You all know too well that Chief Shonekong got to the highest level at the public sector and also at the highest level at the private sector. He ruled this country for a short while before they came back also to enhance and to start NESG. Well, NES as it's called then. Today's is of course also a Founders Forum, which means we're all remembering and commemorating the legacies of the people who birthed this enduring vision. From the very beginning, the NES was conceived to bring together public and private sector leaders in our country in an ongoing dialogue to shape, influence, and create a thriving, competitive, and enduring successful Nigerian economy. So, the bridging and the connection work that the NES has done so exceedingly over the past 3 decades is in fact a natural outward manifestation of what we call today a DNA. And so the theme for today, in the interests reflecting on the past, reimagining the future, invite us first to look backwards and then to cast our gaze into the future, connecting what has gone behind with what is to come. And if I listen again to the remarks by, read by my brother, but from PGD himself, he wants, as an elder statesman, wants to focus more onto the future because indeed, the past is past. But let us cast our mind to about 30 years ago. For some people in this room, they'll be young, under 10 and under 20. But for some of us, 30 years ago, 1994, was the time the NES took off. But it was also an interesting period in the history of our country. And when I say interesting, I mean truly, really dramatic. We had, at that time, just coming out from an aftermath of the June 12, 1993 presidential election, and the aftermath of a military coup and a change in government. And at that time, you saw a somersault in government. I said Chief Shonekon came in, and before we settled down to even embrace him, another, coup had happened, or it's a palace coup, another government had come in. And so you can see that 1993, 1994, for some people that will remember, it was indeed a challenging, time for our country. I will talk about my own experience in a while. The country was in great flux and disconnect with high on account of aborted transition that we had all looked forward to. For those who remember, exactly this month, May, was also when the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, was founded. It was also this ferment that NES was birthed. It was in this whole crisis that NES was birthed as a bold effort to impose a sense of intellectually driven economic order on a drifting, disillusioned nation at that time. 30 years later, the NES has lived up to that billing, becoming one of the most influential institutions, enabling the most impactful reforms that the country is experiencing. We have come a long way as a nation, going from military rule to celebrating this year the unprecedented feat of 25 years of unbroken democracy rule. For some people who will not know, this is the first time we're actually achieving that, ensuring that we can keep for 25 years in a democracy. Therefore, among the workings of the NES and NESG are the following: a flagship annual summit that attracts the highest caliber of socio-economic decision makers in our country, the various roundtables and sectoral policy commissions, and the Bridge Fellowship created to raise a new generation of innovative leaders equipped with policy making and research skills. There's also the technical support work that has produced various pieces of landmark legislation and legislative advocacy, as well as the Pioneering Policy Innovation Council, which is a document that will be passed on here today. And so in all of this, we can see the tireless passion and the energy of the NESG at play. Passion and energy that must never be underrated and that continues to quietly inspire from reform improvement in a way that makes implement policy decisions at all levels of government. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we've talked about the past. The second part of it is reimagining the future. Every occasion on which NESG converses a gathering is an opportunity to image the kind of country we want for ourselves and for our children, and to pilot the journey from where we are to that image or re-image future that we all see, or the world aspire, or we all think about. Imaging and envisioning is a central part of the work that NESG has been called to do. And a glance at some of the summit teams over the years will throw a focus on this. In 2007, for example, the topic then was Nigeria positioning to be the third 20 league. In 2008, it was a race to 2020. At that time, we thought that by the time we get to 2020, the sky will be bluer, the sea will be a lot deeper, and that there will be a lot more air in it. Everything was by the year 2020, So it was a race to 2020, the realities and the possibilities. By 2019, it was Nigeria 2050, shifting gears. And of course, by 2022, it was 2023 and beyond, because 2022 also created another buzz for us. What will happen in the election of 2023, and how do we shape it forward? So the topic from NESG then was 2023 and beyond, priorities for shared prosperity. And just last year, it was a pathway to sustainable economic and transformative inclusion. So you can see that it's all been very topical, discourse that NESG have birthed over, the 3 decades has been. We are not yet where we want to be, in my view, but we're also not where we should be. We must continue to set goals to inspire ourselves to do better and to be better as a nation. We may not always achieve the targets according to the envisioned timelines, but that should not be an excuse for not trying. Like I said, we all have different paths that we've had with NESG. 1994, I was just very young bankers then, just newly married, and we had a lot of vision. We had a lot of aspiration and a lot of plan for the nation and for our career and the rest of it. And I'm sure at every point in time, everybody has had, ups and downs, but NESG had been consistent. I remember too well that, year on year, when the summit was still in Lagos, you look forward to it because it was usually a 3-4 days of, you coming rebirth, you coming refreshed because you've been given the tonic that can propel you and inspiration that can galvanize you for the next, 12 or 11 calendar months. And so I want to thank NESG for being part of my own story, for reshaping our thought process, and for helping us to dimension as we go along. And so I know firsthand the powerful brand and the convening power of NES, one of the most recognizable, credible, and influential institutions in our country, yesterday and today. The gathering here, therefore, today is a testament to that. Those of us in government can readily testify to how seriously we regard the ideas and resources put forward under the NES umbrella. I'm sure, if I'm not mistaken, one of the most powerful speeches that the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, had made in his almost 1 year was at last year's economic summit in Abuja. I was actually spellbound on the TV, and I know you all remember his great speeches, which was one of the driving things that enabled and galvanized, the organized private sector to truly, really, once again, believe in this country. Earlier on, I touched on the seriousness with which NES and NESG prioritizes the principles of collaboration and how you have established functional models that any organization seeking to build multi-stakeholder alliance must emulate. I think that there is an opportunity here for you to do even more as champions of the gospel of a collaborative Nigeria. One of the ideas that the public sector needs to improve on, especially internally, is synergy, having various actors on the same page, overcoming what I call silos impulse to pursue a collective agenda of service and benefit to the citizens. I think NESG can scale up its relevance and we'll all work with you at achieving this. I would therefore like to touch on the linkage between policy work and public consciousness. The more an organization is able to connect with the general public, the greater its effectiveness. This is why I think NES should explore ways of deepening the public-facing side of its work. I'm pleased to know that you have recently launched a podcast that allows for engaging conversation with experts as one of the ways to bring your work to new audiences. And when I say new audiences, you know the people I'm talking about. We need to carry all of them along. I encourage more efforts in this regard, taking advantage of digital technology so that more Nigerians can see not just work that you do, but also how that work contributes to improving the quality of their lives and livelihood. As I close, let me say that I very much look forward to the public lecture and the panel discussion that will follow. Of course, my sister Ifweko, she's a great, speaker, and I'm sure that she will bring, different dimensions to the context of discussion today. And you can see from the very well, array of discussants, I'm sure we're all here for a great time. I have no doubt that today's conversation will leave us with greater clarity and insight on where we need to be and headed as a country pre-eminent economic summit. And it will inspire us to redouble our efforts at translating our vision into reality. On this note, I'd like to wish the Nigerian Economic Summit Group a very happy and fulfilling 30th anniversary, and no doubt that the next 30 years will deliver even more impact, and it will be felt in the life of every Nigerian. Thank you very much for having me.